Hey guys, welcome to Rosie's Dessert Spot. In this video we are creating this sphere cake with fondant and ruffles. I have two half sphere cakes that I have baked and I'm just going to start by trimming off the tops using the cake tin as a guide to make sure that it's all nice and straight. Tap it out of your cake tin and then cut each sphere in 3 layers. I've used buttercream frosting to fill and to stick my cake to my 10-inch cake board. You can find the recipe for this in the eye icon up top and in the description box below as well. It's important to trim off a little section at the very top dome so that it has a flat end, and that flat end is sitting up against the cake board. If it was rounded, it would roll everywhere, so make sure that you just cut a little bit off that top section of one cake so it sits nice and flat. Once all filled and centered, start creating a crumb coat. This is going to be a thin layer of frosting all around the cake to trap in any of the crumbs. Once it's nice and tidy, into the fridge she goes to set and then create a final layer of frosting. There's no reason why mine is coloured, I just had a whole bunch of black and white frosting left over, so I mixed the two together to make this beautiful grey kind of colour. Take a plastic, this is like a bookbinder cover. I've just folded it in half and I'm using it to smooth out the cake as best as I can. You want something flexible with a sharp edge for this part of the project. Into the fridge she goes to set, and in the meantime we will we will roll out our fondant. I've used cornstarch to make sure it doesn't stick to my countertop. You could also use icing sugar instead, or even vegetable shortening. Roll it out to about 3 or so millimeters in thickness, and then drape it over the cake. And you might want to add a little bit of vegetable shortening onto the surface of your buttercream now that it's nice and set from the fridge, and that way your fondant has something to stick onto. Undo those pleats and gently massage the fondant onto your cake. Travel around your cake as you do this rather than working only in one spot. The more you move your fondant, the longer time you have to work with it, otherwise it tends to dry out. Once you reach the bottom, cut off the excess and then with a fondant smoother, go around the cake as you normally would with a regular cake. Here I'm using circular motions all around. Doesn't have to be perfect because this will be covered completely anyway. I have some white fondant and also some black fondant, and I am going to roll it out nice and thin. I've got a multi-circle cutter here by Fem, I believe. I can leave the link to the eBay listing in the description box below for you guys. Tap it out of the cutter and then just fold it in your hand however you see fit to create ruffles. If you want a more delicate look, I would recommend taking a ball tool and thinning out the edges on a sponge, but I just cut and folded and applied to my cake. Add some water at the base of your fondant cake just to activate a bit of a glue in there, and start applying all of your ruffles in a row around the cake. I like to start at the base and then work my way up. I decided to do 2 rows of each color as well. And it's very, very forgiving because the ruffles are still very flexible. As you finish your row, make sure that it's all one level. So for example, if you go around the cake and you see that it's traveling diagonally instead, you can push down those ruffles that are on the higher side, and that way it's all straight again and just very forgiving. On I go with a second layer, this time in white, and I've got a chopstick at the handy to press it into my cake if I feel that it needs a little bit more force to make sure it's stuck on there. Again, I've just used water, but you can use edible glue, which is usually glucose mixed with water, or Tylose powder also mixed with water for a much stronger glue. This is Bakels fondant that I've used as well. I don't actually have my own recipe for fondant. I find that it's a little more complicated than it needs to be. I'd just rather buy it and save the time. But if you want a recipe, let me know and I can devise something, even if it's like a marshmallow recipe. finish off at the very top. I wanted it to end in a little white flower at the top. And then I place the black ruffles around that one. Apply any decorations on top. I've got this Eiffel Tower statue that I bought from a $2 shop a long time ago. And then I've taken a handheld steamer filled with water, and I'm just steaming the outside of the cake for about a minute or two, just enough for the cornstarch to absorb the moisture and melt off the cake basically, and you're left with a beautiful glossy fondant finish with absolutely no cornstarch or icing sugar. Next is the flowers. So I've taken little round balls of pink fondant, I've encased them in plastic wrap, and I'm rolling them out nice and thin, but even thin on one end. So you can see here I'm trying to add more pressure on one side so it's nice and thin, and the other side's just slightly bulky. You can give them a bit of a pinch to thin them out some more. Then take one, roll it nice and tight between your fingers for the center of your rose, and then apply a bit of water at the thick end of 3 other of those petals, and gently wrap them around the bud, overlapping the petals as you go. Place it flat and then peel back each petal and give it a pinch at the very edge to make it look a little bit more lifelike and realistic. Repeat the same process. I've used another 5 petals around this, and notice I'm not closing it directly on the flower, I'm closing it halfway and then feeding the next petal through and repeating. Give it a bit of a pinch around the base to make sure they're all nice and stuck on there, and then again peeling them back and giving them a pinch. I've also reserved the larger ones for the outside row of petals and the smaller petals for the inside part of the flower. Let those dry for about half an hour if you can, and then create your leaves. This is some green fondant rolled out nice and thin, and I'm using a leaf plunger cutter to engrave those little leafy indents in the middle. These were a little bit too big, so I did trim them down along the side just to match the size of the roses. Place the roses on top with a little bit of water. I actually did trim them down at the base so they weren't so bulky, and then apply them onto your cake with some buttercream. And there's your finished cake. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and give it a go. If you do, hashtag Rosie's Dessert Spot so I can see your awesome creation as well. And that is all. Very simple cake to do, very time consuming, I am not gonna lie. It's probably better to cut out all your circles at once and then leave them nice and tightly wrapped in cling film until you need them. And you have to work quickly as well because they can dry out all the same. But it does help to speed up the process. Thanks again, I'll catch you soon.